Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's reverse dye a sweatsuit. This is a sweatshirt and a pair of joggers sweatpants from Old Navy. And if you're not from the United States, Old Navy is a clothing brand store that we have here in the US. The sweatshirt is a women's So Comfy oversized tunic sweatshirt, and the joggers are mid-rise So Comfy joggers. They're a women's style as well. The fabric content on both the joggers and on the sweatshirt is 90% cotton and 10% polyester. On sweatshirts and things like this, generally when they have a polyester content, it's usually the fuzzy part on the inside of the sweatshirt. I'm hoping that's the case with this set. So I've washed the sweatsuit and it's damp with just plain water. That's why you don't see me wearing a pair of gloves. Normally, whenever I tie anything that's been soaked in a soda ash solution, I wear gloves because soda ash really bothers my hands. I'm going to tie just a random sinew design on both the joggers and on the sweatshirt. So I'm gathering up areas and wrapping my sinew around a few times, pulling it as tight as I can pull it, and then moving on to another area. Because of the wax coating on the sinew, wherever I wrap one of those sinew lines and tie really tight, that's going to form kind of a waterproof barrier where the color remover and the dye later on aren't going to get under that line. So that part of the joggers and the sweatshirt are going to remain black. You can make this set either as busy or unbusy as you want to, depending upon how many lines you tie in your joggers and your sweatshirt. If you also notice, I've left both the joggers and the sweatshirt turned right side out. That's because the fuzzy part is on the inside, and that's the part that's made out of polyester. Later on, when I put this in the color remover, I want to see how well the color is getting removed, so I need to be able to see the cotton part of the item or the garment. I'll explain more about that later when I do the color removal process. Kite string and rubber bands don't work the best with this color remover. You can sometimes maybe get by with rubber bands, but I wouldn't risk it. Most of the time, it'll just pretty much remove all the color from your items because it works so quickly and it works so well. Sinew is really the way you want to go when you're using Out White Brite laundry whitener as the color remover. Which, by the way, I get asked this question all the time. People have problems getting consistent definition lines using sinew. And my number one suggestion to everybody who contacts me about that is use a sinew puller of some kind. Doesn't have to be a fancy one like I have, but just something where you can get a good grip and you can pull those lines as tightly as you can. A sinew puller made a huge difference with me. My hands are a little bit smaller and I was able to get a good grip on that puller and get great definition lines. I've seen people use all kinds of creative things for sinew pullers. It just needs to fit your hand well and be really sturdy where when you're pulling on it, it's not going to break. Okay, so it's time to work on the color removal process. And I use Out White Brite laundry whitener. I purchase it at Walmart on the laundry aisle. It's usually by the bleaches, but it's not a bleach product. So it's not going to need to be neutralized and it's not going to damage the fabric. If you can't find any though, I have a link down below this video in the description to Amazon where you can purchase some from there. So right now on my stove, I have 2 pots of water boiling and ready to go. I've placed the items down inside of a plastic tote, and I'm doing this process outside. Out White Brite does have a smell, and I don't want the smell inside of my dye space, and I don't want to inhale any of this powder or the fumes, so I'm wearing my respirator. I'm going to sprinkle the Out White Brite powder liberally over both of these items. Then I'm going to go get the 2 pots of boiling hot water and pour them over the top of the Out White Brite. I've kept this part of the video at real time, so you see whenever that boiling hot water hits the top of the Out White Brite, the powder starts to foam and you'll start to see the color being removed immediately. It's starting to turn kind of an orangey color and it will eventually go to kind of a taupe color. I'm going to add a second pot of boiling hot water because I want the items almost totally submerged in the Out White Brite solution. Most of the time when I do this process, I normally do a lot of items all at once. I place them all down in the container at one time, and pour the Out White Brite over the top of them and the boiling hot water over the top, all at the same time. I've had people ask before if they can reuse this Out White Brite solution, and I've never tried it. However, I've paid attention to some of the posts that other people have done where they have said that they tried to use it and it doesn't work. My understanding is that once you mix the hot water and the Out White Brite together, it activates it, it starts to work, but as it cools off, it's no longer active where it removes the color. So after I added the second pot of boiling hot water over the top, I went ahead and added some more Out White Brite to the top areas that you see that are still pretty dark. I also am going to use a pair of tongs, which I purchased from the Dollar Tree dollar store, and I'm going to move the fabric or the items around in the Out White Brite solution. Make sure they get well saturated, and I'm going to turn them over and make sure that the color is removed equally on both sides. I'm still running this at real time so you can see how quickly this color remover worked. When I turned the pair of joggers over, you can see that darker area where the tag is. That's the inside of the jogger, and this is the reason why I didn't turn my items inside out. One of the first times I used Out White Brite on something that was fuzzy like this, like a sweatshirt, I had the problem with all I could see was the darker area. So I didn't know whether the color remover actually worked or whether it didn't work. So I've kind of gotten to the point where if I'm trying something new that's maybe a sweatshirt or a pair of sweatpants, for the very first time I try one of those items, I just leave the items turned the right way so that I can see what the actual color is going to be and whether the Out White Brite is working on it. I've tried Out White Brite on a variety of things, all different colors, and so far I've had great success. The only items that I've had a problem with Out White Brite working on are polyester items and items that are blue. I don't have problems on navy. Navy works well, but any kind of like a royal blue or anything with a heavy blue presence like teal, Out White Brite doesn't work on that very well. It will maybe lighten the item a little bit, but once you wash the item or you soak it in soda ash, a lot of times the blue comes back. I was really surprised with that the first time I used Out White Brite on a blue item. So from here on, I just kind of test it. You know, I've done teal before and it lightens, and I have had some success with a few blue items. But for the most part, you just kind of expect blue items not to work properly with Out White Brite. I've had a few other wacky things like reds maybe turning more yellow. They don't go quite the taupe. Some of them go pretty bright yellow. Every now and then it's just weird, but for the most part, I've had great success with Out White Brite on most items. I've even used it on rayon items and it works really well, but I've heard from other tie-dyers that Out White Brite does not work on denim, which would make sense because it's blue. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and speed the video up. From this point on, I'm really just allowing the items to soak in the Out White Brite solution. It looks like they're fully saturated and the color's removed, but I want to just make sure. So I'm going to leave it in there, allow it to soak up that solution and any of the color in the center of the folds to have the color removed. Because I'm only doing a couple of items this time and my container isn't really crowded where I might have any kind of issues with the items being able to soak up the solution, I'm really only going to leave them for probably about 10 minutes. Now, if I was doing what I normally do, where I have my container just packed full of items that I'm reverse dyeing, I like to leave those a little bit longer. Make sure I've had plenty of time for each one of the items in the container to soak up the solution. I'll leave those for normally about, say, 20 minutes maybe. I mean, you can tell. As you're moving the items around in the solution, you can see whether or not you spot any little dark spots or areas that look like maybe they didn't get enough Out White Brite or enough of the solution on them. So after leaving the items for about 10 minutes, I took this container into my utility sink, poured the Out White Brite solution down the drain, and I rinsed the joggers and the sweatshirt in cold water. I left them tied the whole entire time, and I'm not going to untie them until I'm finished dyeing them. However, if maybe you wanted to go ahead and untie your items either to see what they look like, or maybe you want to tie a different design in your items when you go ahead and dye them, now would be the time to do that. What you would do is go ahead and rinse really well in the cold water, and then just before you throw them into the washing machine, go ahead and untie them. Then what I do is I put my items into my washing machine, and I place some Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent in the washer, and I wash them using a cold water cycle. I know some tie-dyers don't wash their items in between. I know they just rinse them really well and immediately soak them in soda ash. I don't do that though, and there's a couple reasons why. Number one, I want to make sure I get out as much of that residue from the Out White Brite as I possibly can. And number two, I like to get out the smell. Like I mentioned earlier, Out White Brite does have a smell, and in my opinion, whenever I wash the items after I do the Out White Brite solution and don't allow those smells to stay in the item, I haven't had any problems with that smell remaining. That's been another complaint that I've heard other tie-dyers say, is it's got a really strong smell and they can't seem to get it out. Well, I'm not entirely sure what process they're using, but I do know I'm very sensitive to smells. And I just smelled this sweatshirt after it's been dyed, and the only thing I can smell in it is the textile detergent that I used for the final wash after the sweatshirt was dyed. I don't still smell the Out White Brite solution. So after the items were washed in the washing machine, as soon as they came out, I put them in a bucket to soak in a soda ash solution. But I did not put them in my main soda ash solution bucket. I placed them in another bucket, and then I poured some soda ash solution over the top until they were well saturated. I allowed them to sit in that soda ash solution for about 20 to 30 minutes before I wrung them out of my Panda spin dryer. So any item that has been reverse dyed like this, the color removed, any kind of process like that, is going to leak some color out into the soda ash solution. I've included some photos of what that soda ash solution looked like after soaking these two items. It was very blue, and I don't want to reuse that for something else. I don't know whether or not it's going to cause any issues with another item, but it will have a little bit of smell and definitely some color. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw this soda ash solution that I soaked these items in out. Now, if I'd done like I normally do and had reverse dyed a whole bunch of items all at the same time, I would soak all of them in this same solution. It's not going to cause any issues or any problems with that. But after I was finished soaking all the reverse dyed items, I would still throw the soda ash solution out. Like I said, it's got a lot of color and it does have a kind of funky smell. Okay, so now that the items have been soaked in soda ash solution, I'm putting them aside to allow them to dry out completely. I like to dye thicker folds like this when they're completely dry because I think I get better color saturation in the middle. And if you'd like some more information about that, I have a blog post addressing this topic out on my website, and I have a link to my website down below this video in the description. But as you can see, the color ended up being kind of like a taupey type color. So for this suit, I have chosen some blue and kind of purple colors. I'm building the colors around Dye Spin's Cosmic. That's the one that's kind of got a lot of blue and purple mixed with it. Okay, so for my setup, I have a large plastic tote with a metal rack down in the bottom. And then on top of the metal rack, I'm going to place two plastic containers. They have holes in the sides of them, but the bottom is solid. I guess I'm almost going to kind of partially muck dye these, like they're going to have maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch of muck remaining down in the bottom of the container. I'm going to place the joggers in one container, and I'm going to place the sweatshirt in the other container. I don't have a large enough container where I can put them both in together, or I would. I do, but I would have to muck dye them, and I don't want to do that with this set. Now I'm going to apply a layer of ice over the top of both of the items. I have them right up next to each other because I want to try to apply the dye close to the same on both the joggers and the sweatshirt. They're going to be a set, so I want them to look as close to each other as possible. So over the top of the ice, I'm going to randomly apply Blue Pervinca, Ice Dye Blue, Cosmic, and Velvet Orchid, which are all dye spin colors. Now I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top of the dye, and then place this container aside and allow the ice to melt. I've included a few process photos so you can see what the sweatshirt and the joggers looked like as the ice melted. After all the ice melted, I waited probably about 48 hours before I began rinsing the sweatshirt and the joggers. You can see there is just a little bit of muck remaining down in the bottom of these containers. To rinse this suit, I took it to my utility sink and I started rinsing both the joggers and the sweatshirt in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. I untied the items and then I warmed the water up to hot, and I continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of rinsing for a long time, I went ahead and ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the items inside, and allowed them to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I put the sweatshirt and the joggers into my washing machine and I washed them using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed them, and let's see what they look like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one looks really cool. I like the color removal process. I removed enough color that I think it gives some cool definition lines, but not so much color that there's not really any design in the sweatsuit. And I really like the colors. Like I said, I built this design around Cosmic. I think Dye Spin's Cosmic is a really cool color, and it incorporates both blues and purples. So I used a couple of blue shades and I used an additional purple, and I think they flow really well together. I do have some lighter areas where I have some of the remaining color removed color, kind of that taupey color. It's not super taupe though. I mean, it is shaded a little bit blue, but there are a few areas where I could have gotten a little bit better color saturation. But I'm not unhappy with it. I actually kind of like that taupe color, and I think it throws in an extra little design element, almost like another color that I used for the tie-dye process. I really don't mind when I do reverse dyes if some of that taupe kind of shows through. I think it's interesting. I think that the colors are more accurate on the mannequins. Whenever I tried to photograph this flat, the colors were coming out just off. I tried to do a color correction to correct it to the right colors, but I think when you look at the mannequin, that's a better representation of what the color really looks like on the sweatshirt and the joggers. As far as the sweatshirt and the joggers themselves, I really like these two blanks. I think they turned out really well. They worked well with the color removal process, and I think they're nice items. As far as colors go, the sweatshirts, I bought a few of these in kind of a cream color, but I don't think they have the joggers in that color. They do have some sweatpants, but they're an oversized sweatpant if that's a look maybe that you like. The sweatshirt's an oversized look too. But they both took the dye really well, and I think they dyed up really nicely. And you know, it's really hard to find sweatsuits. I don't know why. I don't know why it's so hard to find reasonably priced sweatsuit sets that dye up nicely and have a high cotton content. You can usually either find a sweatshirt or a pair of joggers or sweatpants, but to find both of them that go well together is pretty difficult. So overall, I'm really happy with this set. I really like the color removal, I like the dye colors that I used, and I like the way it turned out. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you know of a great place to get maybe some sweatshirts that have joggers or sweatpants that go well together, drop that down below too. I'm always looking for some new items to tie-dye. And if you've enjoyed watching the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.